Hello everyone, this is Scarzig, and welcome to the Vetruvian section of my Shim'Zar full set review. Um, Vetruvian didn't receive any card changes along with their set, so we can hop right in to the cards they received, and we're going to get things started off right with probably the best card in the Shim'Zar set, Nimbus. It's a 5 mana 3/8. Whenever this minion takes damage, summon a Soulburn Obelisk nearby. Now, when I first heard of Nimbus, I was only concerned with its effect, right? I was like, what does a Soulburn Obelisk do? The developers intentionally left that vague because they wanted us to play Nimbus and then discover and figure out what Soulburn Obelisk was. And in my quest, in my thirst to figure out what Soulburn Obelisk did, I didn't even pay attention to its stats or mana cost. And once I actually came back around and saw that it was a 5 mana 3/8, I was absolutely disgusted. Because as I saw its effect, let me back up. Soulburn Obelisk is an 0/4. It's a 4 health obelisk. It still summons dervishes like normal. But whenever a minion damages a Soulburn Obelisk, that minion is instantly killed. The Soulburn Obelisk's effect procs on ping effects as well, like Battle Pando, White Widow, Glacial Elemental. All of those effects that come from the minion count for Soulburn Obelisk's effect. So it's going to be controlling minions like that you aren't going to be able to use to clear the Soulburn Obelisk without trading your own minions. And so I was like, okay, Soulburn Obelisks are actually really good. They're, it's an obelisk that your opponent is going to have to clear using their general. And your opponent isn't going to be able to dispel all the Soulburn Obelisks. They're going to want to dispel Nimbus and then clear out the obelisks later. And so there's a chance that not even a chance. Vetruvian is now in a spot where they're able to play more threats than you are able to dispel. That was one of the reasons that Vetruvian was so weak for a long time, is that a lot of their threats could just be answered or ignored, and you didn't have to, and you could save all of your answers and dispels for their Amera healers and stuff. And so that was basically taking away one of their main win conditions, and it was allowing people to trump them in a lot of situations. But now, from this set, they're back to their old glory, where they're able to tempo out a lot of threats that's going to eat all of your opponent's dispels right up, and then they're just going to overrun you. And Nimbus is going to be leading the charge. After I found out the effect of Soulburn Obelisk, and I was like, oh, and Nimbus has 8 HP, so it's going to generate probably 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 Soulburn Obelisks. Like, not even considering Vetruvian's buff cards or it being healed or something, so it's generating more value. I was like, what's it cost? Like 7? That's what I thought. And when I found out that it costed 5, it's absolutely insane. And this card is going to absolutely rule the meta, and everybody just pull out your damn light benders, because Nimbus is here. It's coming for us. So coming up next, we've got ALLOMANCER. And I guess that allomancy is the ability to enchant. It's magic that it deals with metal, alloys, I mean to say, which is really interesting. Allomancer, yes, it has the ability to magically heal all of your burns, which is what we're going to need after we're done fighting Nimbus. But it's a 4 mana 4/3, which is a really decent stat line. Dying Wish, summon a random obelisk on this space. It's a bit like, it's a bit like Windstrike, of course, where it dies and then it's a 4 mana 4/3, just like Windstrike. It's not going to be as versatile in what you get to trade into the way Windstrike is, but instead of drawing you a card, it's going to leave a body on the board. And so if you're playing a obelisk-based deck, Allomancer is going to be really good. And even if you aren't playing an obelisk-based deck, it's still going to be really decent, because whatever obelisk you summon needs to be dealt with, because it's going to be generating a 2/2 every turn that's going to ping something or do other crazy stuff. It has been confirmed that ALLOMANCER is able to spawn Soulburn Obelisks with its effect, so I think that alone makes it decent enough to run. And even if you get a Windstorm Obelisk, I mean, you still get a free Obelisk that you don't need to pay for, which is what makes ALLOMANCER so good. If you get a Fireblaze Obelisk, which is a 3-mana minion, it's essentially like playing a 1-mana 4/3. You know what I mean? So the value that it generates from the obelisk is basically going to have ALLOMANCER pay for itself, and it's an excellent minion. Next, we have Astral Flood, which is a 3-mana, put 3 random battle pets into your action bar, aka a 3-mana, draw 3 cards, and the battle pets that you get are going to be the Vetruvian battle pets or one of the 6 tokens, as I've mentioned several times before. And so you can replace the ones that you don't like, and you play the ones that are useful for you. Astral Flood's going to be really good for refueling, even if you aren't playing a swarmy Vetruvian deck, which is going to be its own archetype, of course, with battle pets and whatnot. Then this still might see play in other archetypes of Vetruvian, just so that they can draw more bodies and put more threats on the board. And here is Windslicer, which is a minion that was spoiled a while ago. It's a 2-mana 2/3. Opening Gambit, lower the cost of all structure minions in your action bar by 1. Structures include all obelisks and Bastion, which is another structure that passively gives all of your friendly minions +1 HP as long as it remains in play. Vetruvian probably isn't going to go that ham with structures where they actually bother running Bastion, but the fact that Windslicer is a decent 2-mana 2/3 for Vetruvian that might get you some value by discounting 1 or maybe even 2 Fireblaze Obelisk or an Ethereal Obelisk makes Windslicer a really, really nice pickup in my opinion, and it's going to be worth running just for the sake of getting a 2/3 on the board, because every once in a while, you're still going to be playing a Healing Mystic or a Primus Fist turn 1, and you don't get to take advantage of their effect, but you still like the 2/3 body, and that's what it's going to be like for Vetruvian, where you get your 2-mana 2/3, and if the opening gambit hits, then that's just icing on the cake. And so, first Vetruvian battle pet is Pax. It's a 2-mana 2/1 with the Dying Wish to summon 2, count them, 2 Iron Dervishes nearby. So it's a 2/1 that spawns 2 2/2s. And that's a crazy value built into a 2-mana card. Because it's a battle pet, you can't control it, but it doesn't matter because you want this thing to run in and die anyway. As soon as it goes off, you now have 2 extra bodies that your opponent needs to deal with. This is an effect that you would assume would even come in Abyssian, but would probably be too strong if they had it. And so now Vetruvian has it. They're going to be having dervishes littering all over the board. It's going to be fantastic. This card is super strong, 3 of in all Vetruvian decks for sure. Just because, like I said, when it goes off, it's going to give you at least 2 free body blockers. It's 2 damage, it's 4 damage, I should say, that your opponent now has to figure out how to deal with and has to distribute amongst their forces. And you can get extra copies of this thing through Astral Flood, which is huge. So next we have Corpse Combustion. It's a 5-mana card to summon all friendly minions with Dying Wish destroyed since your last turn on random spaces. Now, this is a bit confusing, the wording, and it works like Nether Summoning, of course. But the only things that Vetruvian really has that they'd want to bring back are maybe Amera Healers and Pax. So you can you can double dip into their value. Your opponent spends resources clearing Pax or your Amera Healer, and then you bring it right back. It is kind of useful, but because it summons it on a random space, that Amera Healer might not spawn in a proper spot to provoke something. And you aren't going to be able to move whatever you summon the turn that you cast Corpse Combustion. So it's a pretty interesting card for like super late game control value, but it's not really going to see play because it's a bit too situational, which is the same reason you don't see Nether Summoning unless it's in super heavy control Abyssian decks, which you don't see anymore because control Abyssian decks are all Shadow Nova decks. And next up we have FALCIUS, which is a 3-mana 3/3, which is a respectable stat line for its cost, but its opening gambit is absolutely insane. Your general gains +2 attack and takes no damage this turn. So it acts like a pseudo heal, but it allows your general to slay 4 HP or lower minions, which is going to be huge tempo for Vetruvian to keep up controlling the early game so they don't get overrun. One of the problems that Vetruvian had is while they're trying to get their obelisks and everything set up, and they're developing like a lot of weak bodies like pyromancers and dune casters and stuff that are really easy to clear out. They were just getting overrun because your opponent just slaps whatever you played with your general or kills it with a spell, and it develops a body of their own. And Vetruvian had a really hard time dealing with those threats. And so FALCIUS develops a decent body and allows your general to pull in some to actually pull their weight and put in some heavy work. In older Vetruvian lists that I've run, I've actually included Staff of Akirs for this same sort of purpose, where it allows your general to walk up and slap those 2-drops and everything to kind of control the board during the early game. And so FALCIUS allows you to do that a lot better than running Staff of Akir while developing a body, and you take no return damage, which is absolutely insane. If you can whittle something down to 4 HP, regardless of how much attack it has, you can just slap it. So FALCIUS going to be a 3 of in Vetruvian for sure. Next up, we've got PANTHERAN, which is a 6-mana 6/6 that costs 0 if you've cast all 3 Scion's Wish spells this game. And considering the prevalence of packs being able to spawn dervishes and the overall obelisk archetype being buffed, having dervishes on the board to play Scion's Third Wish on isn't going to be as much of an issue as it was before. The problem is that even if PANTHERAN is free, by the time you've managed to cast Scion's First, Second, and Third Wish, it'll probably be too late in the game where a 6/6 isn't going to save you. And if you have enough time to cast a 6/6 that essentially is vanilla, then you know what I mean? It's because it doesn't do anything as it comes into play. You're just developing a strong body. You're most likely really far ahead anyway, so PANTHERAN just becomes a win more card. You never want to draft this thing in Gauntlet because there's no guarantee that you're going to get all 3 Scion's Wish spells, and there's plenty of other minions in the 6-mana slot that have better stats. So PANTHERAN is really cool, but it's not going to see play because by the time it wants to drop, it's going to be too late for it to be useful. Next, we've got Psychic Conduit, which lets you take control of an enemy minion with 2 or less attack until the end of the turn. Now, this spell works like Zenrui, where you take control of something and you can't move it on that same turn. But what it does allow you to do is it allows you to, slip your minions past a body blocker. It allows you to maybe step through a provoke to get at the opponent's general. The key here is that the minion needs to have 2 or less attack, which Vetruvian is able to pull off with Blind Scorch. This sort of gives them a late game option for just sidestepping a threat in combos. There are, a few niche minions like Bone Reaper and stuff that have really low attack, but they're really bulky to tie you up, and Psychic Conduit is going to be able to allow you to sidestep those a bit better. We'll have to see if this is actually going to see play because it seems way too situational, but it's interesting that they are supporting Vetruvian's, take control of the enemy forces, dominating the enemy forces, like their whole mind control theme. I'm glad that they're sort of adding more cards into that. And so up next we've got Ray, which is the other Vetruvian battle pet. It's a 1/1 Dying Wish, dispel the nearest enemy minion. Now, it's free, which is kind of nice. It's like attaching a delayed siphon energy to a body, but it makes Ray horrible because normally when you want to dispel something, you need to dispel it right away. It would be cool, you know what I mean? Like, Sunstone Templar kind of does that. Lionar Sunstone Templar. It's a 1/4 that whenever it attacks or counterattacks something, it dispels it. We also have minions like Tether Master that whenever it's attacked, it dispels whatever has attacked it. So, because Ray is a battle pet, it it lets your opponent can play around it way too hard for its dispel to actually be useful. So I think that they included this just to make Astral Flood have a bit more bad outcomes and like poor variance to it, because if you play Astral Flood and you get 3 rays, then that's just a super hard whiff. At the very least, you'll be able to develop 3 1/1s, but it's not really going to do much for you in the long run. So it's there. It's not going to see play. And like I said, in my opinion, it's just there specifically to make random battle pet effects a little bit worse for Vetruvian because they excel in so many other areas. Next up, we've got Spinecleaver, which is a 5 mana artifact. If you look closely at the sword, you can see it's the one that Saj uses, the same way that Winterblade is an artifact, but also the weapon that Kara uses. Spinecleaver, when your general gains +1 attack, which is nothing to write home about, but the effect: enemy minions destroyed by your general summon a Bloodfire totem on that space. Bloodfire totems spawn under your opponent's control, and what they do is every turn they ping the enemy general, well, the general that controls them, aka the enemy general, for 1 damage. So if you equip a Spinecleaver and you're able to kill 2 or 3 of your opponent's minions, suddenly they have these structures that can't move that are pinging them for damage. This is a great way for Artifact Vetruvian to start taking over the board and actually put a timer on their opponent. Normally, Artifact Vetruvian would just try to run around until they collected their combo with Aurora's Tears and kill you. This way, when they get there, they've managed to kite all the way to the other end of the board, equip that Wildfire Ankh, and then they put Spinecleaver and another artifact on top of it, and then they're just slaying all of your minions from range and really punishing you for it. So we'll have to see if Spinecleaver will actually do enough for Artifact Vetruvian, but with the addition of FALCIUS, that makes it so that your general doesn't take any damage on their turn. I think that Spinecleaver is going to be a really nice addition to Artifact Vetruvian, and it's definitely going to be really hard to deal with. Outside of actually removing the artifact, I mean to say the Bloodfire totems are going to be a real annoyance to deal with. Next up, we've got Whisper of the Sands, which is a 2 mana spell. Summon a Wind Dervish nearby each friendly obelisk, and then draw a card. So right off the bat, Whisper of the Sands replaces itself. You get to summon an obelisk, a Wind Dervish near each friendly obelisk, and this does not matter if the obelisk is dispelled or not, which is really great because Vetruvian has always needed something that allows them to make use of their dispelled obelisks, and Whisper of the Sands finally gives them that option. The other thing about this card is that it allows you to double dip on your existing obelisk. They're going to spawn a dervish at the beginning of their turn, you do your thing trading into their general or clearing their board, and then Whisper of the Sands comes down, you get to do it again, you draw a card, so there's a chance you'll be able to chain multiple Whisper of the Sands in the same turn, but this is only going to be good enough if you have, the right amount of obelisks. And I mean, people run Rasha's Curse, a 2 mana spell that summons a dervish, so being able to pay 2 mana, summon multiple dervishes, and then draw a card is going to be huge. Whether or not this card actually will see play depends on how consistently Vetruvian can get a bunch of obelisks on the board, or even if they'll bother with that at all before they can just overpower you with their pretty good set they have now and Nimbus. Lastly, we have Circle of Desiccation. It's an 8 mana spell, destroy all non-structure minions, and I unfortunately think that this is a really bad spell. You're basically able to wipe your opponent's board because if they aren't playing structures. The thing is this card is a dead draw in the Vetruvian Mirror, and if Vetruvian is going to be as dominant in the meta and on the ladder as people are predicting, then Vetruvian Mirrors are going to be very, very common, and Circle of Desiccation is going to get worse and worse and worse the more Vetruvians there are on the ladder. Furthermore, you're going to be killing your own stuff if you manage to develop a Pantheran somehow, or any other big neutral threats. Any of your blast minions like Starfire Scarab are also going to be cleared by this card. So it's strictly like a desperation comeback card where you slay all of your opponent's minions, and then all of your obelisks are left alive. And then what? At 8 mana, your opponent's probably going to have more out-of-hand options to finish you off anyway. So I think that having this available as an option is too clunky, in my opinion. And plus, Vetruvian already has stronger late game options with like Dominate Will, etc., etc., that I don't think they're going to need to make use of this. And it's a fun spell, but even if you get it to go off, it's not going to instantly win you the game. I think a lot of other cards will. This will save you from, this won't even save you from, you know, Silithar Elders, because it destroys them and they just turn into eggs. And then maybe your dervishes will spawn next turn in the right spots in order for you to clear the eggs. But we'll have to see. But in my opinion, Circle of Desiccation is actually really bad, and that's fine, because Vetruvian got so much good stuff, they can have some bad stuff too. So thank you for joining me for this section of my Shim'Zar set reveal, and I will see you in the next video.